Hey everybody, it's Miss Virginia USA 2019 Courtney Lynne Smits, and you're listening to Life After the Crown with Tim Tialdo.
Hey everybody, my name is Tim Tialdo, and welcome to Season 2 of the Life After the Crown podcast. Now, if you haven't had a chance to listen to any of the previous episodes, I do encourage you to go back and listen because there are many valuable interviews that you will definitely gain some wisdom from. Now, for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, welcome and thanks for checking us out. Each episode of Life After the Crown, I interview former pageant contestants, title holders, and women of influence who share advice and stories on how to help you succeed in the world of pageants, but more importantly, how you can flourish in the professional world once your pageant journey comes to an end. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to download this podcast. I do value your time, and I'm glad you're here listening. So let's get started. My guest today just gave up her crown as Miss Virginia USA 2019. She also held the titles of Miss Junior Teen America, Miss Georgia Teen USA 2012, and Miss Georgia Collegiate 2016. Last year, she was selected from a field of more than 8,000 applicants as part of the Sweet 16 for the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition and walked in the 2019 runway show for Sports Illustrated during Miami Swim Week. She is a fifth-generation member of the military, serving for her fifth year as a psychological operations specialist in the United States Army Reserve. She is a student at Virginia's Liberty University working towards her Bachelor of Arts degree in communication with a double minor in sociology and social work. She, along with her best friend Lily, started their own organization at 10 years old called Queens for Courage to raise support and awareness for wounded warriors. She was recognized for these efforts with the prestigious Prudential Spirit of Community Award by the Duchess of York at the White House. Along with her support to wounded warriors, she also advocates for more access to mental health programs in an effort to decrease or eliminate the veteran service member suicide rate. Her future plans include working as a foreign services officer and modeling. She's been a real role model for many this past year. Courtney Lynne Smits, welcome to Life After the Crown. It's great to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we've been talking quite a bit on Instagram just about possibly finally getting you on here, and I know you just gave up your crown as we speak this past weekend. But as I look at your bio there, as I'm reading it, I mean, you've held a lot of different titles, and pageantry has been a big part of your life for the last decade. Let's walk back through that. So Miss Junior Teen America looks like it was the first one. What got you into pageants?
So Miss Junior Teen America was definitely the first major title that I was able to hold. I actually started doing pageants when I was 18 months old. My parents saw a pamphlet or one of those little table things on the mall, like in the mall food court for Sunburst
Yep.
pageants. And we were in North Carolina. My parents were stationed there at the time, and they just decided to go for it. They put me in my first little baby pageant, and I think it's safe to say that I've been hooked since. I mean, there's a video of me at I think it was my first pageant. My mom brought me up on stage, and my dad was out in the audience, and I saw him, and I just lost my mind, screaming, smiling, blowing kisses. I think it's definitely safe to say that I have been hooked on pageantry since I was a young girl, but I have had the great honor of holding so many awesome titles and meeting so many cool people. So I'm just it's crazy to think that chapter of my life is potentially over. And you never know what's going to happen in the future. But as of right now, I think it's time to move on, go, finish school, get a career, stuff like that. So
you've been competing since you were 18 months old.
Yes.
Wow. So my 20-month-old daughter is already behind, is what you're telling me.
Oh, yep. You better get on it, Tim. I mean, it's time.
Well, so you did Teen America, Georgia Teen USA, Georgia Collegiate, Virginia USA just this past year. I'm guessing you competed in the different states because you're a military kid and you traveled around a lot. Is that right?
Yes. So I actually grew up in Georgia. I went kindergarten through 12th grade in the same school district because my mom made us a promise that we were going to stay in the same school our entire school career. So I was very blessed in that aspect. But when this was probably 2 years ago now, about 8 months before the Miss Virginia USA pageant, my mom got a huge promotion up in Washington, D.C., and my grandmother had recently moved in with us. I was kind of at a crossroads with schools, as in I could transfer schools, and I was at the University of North Georgia, but I was ready to, see what else was offered out there in the world. So I came up here with them, and now it's 3 crazy ladies living in one house. So,
well, as you look back on 4 different titles, just giving up the last one, which one was your favorite and maybe why?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's hard to choose between the USA titles. One, because growing up in Georgia, I had such an incredible support system through pageantry. And I, basically had a family. The Georgia pageantry can be pretty serious sometimes. And I grew up with these girls competing as a young girl, and we all competed together through high school and college years. So it was cool seeing, the culmination of that. When one girl wins a big title, everybody is so happy for them, and that support system behind them is amazing. So I had such a great support system, such a great sponsorship system through the Georgia Teen USA program, and Kim Green was an amazing woman and was a fantastic role model. So that was definitely a great experience. And coming up to Virginia, it was such a different experience because I had a whole different great support system, but I had to learn how to do it more on my own as a Miss. And having the Miss Virginia USA title was my first major Miss title, I would say. So kind of learning how to do all of that, as a Miss and doing it more on my own was a learning experience, which I appreciate more than I think I realize.
Now, for anybody that's ever met you in person, maybe they've seen you on stage, they've seen you on Instagram, you are tall.
Yes.
Have you found that to be an advantage, or do you feel like it's been a disadvantage for you competing?
I think it's definitely been an advantage in the aspect that, it kind of makes me stand out more. And the girl that will show up, I'm 6'1", and I don't think that always registers as a female who is 6'1". That doesn't always register for people who haven't met me in person, but I am still the 6'1" girl that shows up in her Chinese laundry tippy top. So not only am I 6'1", I'm also 6 inches taller than 6'1" by the time I get on stage. So I think that's definitely an advantage. Shopping for gowns wasn't always easy, but thankfully, like Giovanni, their gowns are always insanely long. So I've gotten lucky with a few gown companies. I worked for McDougal for almost 10 years, and they have always been so wonderful in helping me find the perfect gown. So it's been a disadvantage in clothing-wise and boyfriend-wise for sure, but competing-wise, I think it's definitely paid off. So,
are guys intimidated by you?
Yeah, I would say so. People don't realize when I say 6'1", it doesn't click for them until they see it in person. So, I don't know, what the disconnect is there, but then, I go on a date and guys are like, oh, so you really are tall. And I'm like, you've met me. And they're like, yeah, but you know what? The tallness doesn't really sink in until we're on a date. And I was like, okay, that doesn't make any sense, but thank you.
Sounds like we better start hanging you out with basketball players.
Exactly.
Well, I guess one thing I do want to talk about, I've had quite a few of your sisters from the USA class on. I had Allie and Alea on recently. I, of course, had Chesley on. And I asked all of them because I think for everybody that listens, they want to know what it's like to go through the whole pageant system right now. I talk to a lot of people from the past, and we can talk about everywhere from the 90s to the 2000s, but you actually just participated in what is the most current version of Miss USA. And I would just kind of love to know from your standpoint, what's the experience been like, and are you happy with your experience in the current world of pageantry?
I think the current world of pageantry is at such a dramatic or drastic change or cross paths. Growing up in pageantry, I've seen it from, the 90s as a baby all the way up until now. And so I think just seeing the insane changes that have gone on during the life of pageantry in the past 20 years has been interesting. I'm not sure if pageantry now and pageantry 20 years ago can necessarily be compared because it's such a different, time frame. But I think now pageantry is leaning towards more like social movements as compared to when, it was in the early 2000s as it was more the typical beauty pageant. So now is more of like coming in and you have to have a story, you have to have the education, you have to have more of the whole package. You have to have the beauty and the height and the body and all of this stuff culminating into one thing. Whereas in the early 2000s, I think as long as you were tall and beautiful with a pretty face and you were, you could form a generally coherent sentence, then you were good to go.
So. I know you've heard me have these conversations with, quite a few people. Probably the most poignant one was with Shandy, in which we got into some of the more controversial subjects. But for a lot of the women that I've talked to in your class, for some, it really bothers them. And for others, they're like, no, I actually kind of like it. I know the pageant word when you girls say interesting. Interesting is like a nice way to say I'm not really a fan of it.
Right.
From your standpoint, what would you like to see change if you could for the 2020 class?
I really just hope that these girls focus more on being a capable leader and capable title holder rather than hoping that they make it to the top because of and I don't think sob story is the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use. I don't want them to think that they can make it all the way because of a sob story or because I know there's a big controversy out there with transgender women competing, or one of the title holders for this class has been all over the news because of her sexuality. Like, in my personal opinion, I don't think that should matter whatsoever. As long as you are a capable leader and capable title holder, I want them to be able to see that that's what it takes to be Miss USA or Miss Universe or Miss America or whatever. It's a little frustrating that, some people are making such a big deal out of this because I, as a 23-year-old white girl, sometimes I feel like, it's not okay to be normal anymore. Like, why do I have to have a sob story or have some big dramatic thing that went on in my life in order to be a capable title holder? So I think that's the more frustrating part. I'm a basic normal person, and I have worked my rear end off in order to become Miss Virginia USA and be the best Miss Virginia USA that I could possibly be. But I don't have a crazy sob story, and I don't have some big dramatic thing that went on in my life in order to get me to that point. But I still did it. I just want girls to realize that that's not all it takes. You don't need a sob story in order to be successful.
Well, and I think what you're bringing up is one of the big arguments. And I realize for everybody listening, I know this is controversial, so don't get all pissy when we talk about this. But, it's the story part of it is not just a story.
Right.
I guess the perception has been that the story really is more identity politics. If the story of your journey factors into what's hot right now. So I'll give you a good example would have been Kaylin Miller-Keys 2 years ago. Was a rape victim from, she's from Virginia. She ended up in North Carolina and went on from there. But she was referred to offline as the Me Too girl. Now, I know Kaylin. We worked together before the pageant. I think the world of her. It just happened to be that she fell into that category, and the story worked really well for, Fox at the time. And I think that's what people are now seeing is they're like, oh, I don't have the story that fits the narrative of what's going on in politics or society right now, so I probably don't have a chance. And I think I think it's a warranted opinion. Do I know that that's true or not? I don't. I couldn't tell you one way or the other, but I definitely get the frustration with it. And I think that it is the responsibility, maybe not of MUO, but of IMG, the ownership to say, look, we need to balance this thing out a little bit more and take away some of the things that are driving people nuts. Because if it's just about ratings and about money, look, I get it. I realize why they do that. But what's pageantry anymore if it's just about ratings and money?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good argument. And I 100% get it from your standpoint, and I agree with it, to be quite honest with you. I don't know how exactly to fix it right now, and I'm hoping that, the powers that be will continue to move on that. But I appreciate you sharing your opinion because I know it can be controversial, and you certainly don't want anybody to look at you and hate you, but sometimes we have to throw out opinions that, we feel very strongly about, and I appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely. And in saying that, I don't want girls to feel like, their story is not important or their story should be, buried. Like, your life is your life. And if you went through something traumatic or you went through something that changed your life and it's something that you think could help other people, then I want you to go with that. I want you to I want you to use it and try to help other people in that process, but don't use it to the point, like you said, as a political identifiers to where you think it's going to get you ahead in life, because in all honesty, it's not. And as long as, if you're not a capable leader or a capable title holder, capable in doing whatever you're trying to accomplish, and you're just trying to use that story or that journey to get ahead, I think that's going to be realized, and people are going to see that a lot sooner than what you think, and it's not going to go well. So just use your abilities as a person and as a title holder, leader, whatever, to do the best job you can absolutely do, instead of trying to make a name for yourself based off of life experiences, because your life experience happened, but you are still in control of your future. So if you don't like something, it's your job to change it. So take it as you will, but that's just the way I see it.
Well, very well said. And again, I appreciate you sharing that. Now, I want to move on from pageantry because you have been a very popular member of this class, not necessarily for your title as Virginia, but for the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition and everything that's been going on with that. So I had the huge, long conversation with Olivia Jordan about when she did it and she got into the issue. I want you to talk about your journey and what you've gone through to be part of the Sweet 16 and what that has done for you this year.
Yeah, I mean, this has been just an incredible experience. You know, I think it's so different from the Miss USA experience that I can't really compare and contrast the two. But when I went to Miami for Swim Week, I had every intention of just going down there, seeing what the deal was about. My miss from when I was Miss Georgia Teen, Jazz Wilkins, she's actually a former rookie, and she's the one who has inspired me and encouraged me after all these years to do it. And I figure, you know, after Miss USA, this is the best body I'm ever going to have, so I might as well go for it while I can. So I just went down there. I think there was probably 6, 7, 8 other Miss USA girls that went, and a few of us ended up just like renting a little like a apartment hotel for the week, and we were just going to make a week of it, have, you know, a little vacation, spend some time together, and then hopefully this would work out for one or more of us. So we all ended up going to the open casting. A few of the girls, Haley and Hannah, which was West Virginia and Alabama, they actually got called back from the online submission videos that some of us did. I didn't get called back from it. So I was, you know, standing in line with the other girls, and we ended up getting there at like 4 a.m. It was pouring down rain. We were outside. They wouldn't let us go into this hotel. So we were sitting outside, and the open call didn't open until like 8 or 9. So we were sitting out there for hours, basically. And we were just hanging out. We were having a great time. Like I said, we were really just there to spend time together and just like hope that this worked out for somebody. So we all ended up going in. We went through the whole process. We each got to interview with either a former rookie or a staff member from the magazine. I got to interview with Brooks Nader, who is just like a dream and a goddess and just got married and, you know, generally perfect. So I was very happy. And then at the end of the day, we all left. Actually, I think we were done by like 11. So we all ended up going to lunch, going back to our hotel. We took naps. They told us, you know, if you make it, you'll get a phone call, email, text messages, whatever. So again, we weren't really expecting anything. We were getting ready to go out for a night on the town. We were going to go get dinner, go hang out with some other friends that were in town. And I was in the shower, and I heard, like, bloody screaming from the other room. And I jumped out of the shower thinking somebody's dying, and it's Hannah saying that she got a call back for the top 60. We were all super excited, and then Alice got one. She's Miss Ohio, and everything was amazing. You know, we were so excited that 2 of our friends had made it in, and then out of nowhere, like 30 minutes after both of them, I ended up getting one. I really thought I was going to pass out because, you know, at that point I didn't think anything was happening for me, and I was just happy for my friends. And then, so the next day, we clearly went to bed very early, wanting to be prepared for the next day. We went in with the top 60 girls that got called back, and there was a photo shoot with Utsai, who is an icon, which was just kind of insane to, you know, stand there and pose in front of a camera for the Utsai. And we did another little interview with MJ Day, who is, you know, kind of the top dog, I would say, for SI swimsuit. Mm-hmm. And we did like a question and answer panel thing. Olivia Culpo was there. Winnie was there. You know, a couple other, like, Camille Kostek was there. Like, it was just a very surreal and cool experience to sit down with these, like, you know, current, very famous supermodels and see what their insights were into the industry right now. So we just kind of had a whole day of that. It was great. And then they sent us all out into the hallway. We literally sat in this hallway for, like, probably 2 hours, all just getting to know each other, getting to know the other top 60 girls. And then the 3 of us, Alice, Hannah, and I were just, you know, very anxiously awaiting getting to go back in. So they bring us back into this room after a few hours. And it's kind of like that top model thing in the classic America's Next Top Model seasons when they would bring all the girls in. There were people standing on this little stage, and they had like a stack of pictures in their hand. They set us all down. There's cameras everywhere. It was just like a very like odd thing. We didn't really know what to do with ourselves, so we just kind of sat there. And they were like, if we call your name and show your picture, please come up on stage. You've made it into the top 16. So they go through all these girls. And they get to, I think it was 14. And by that point, you know, basically it's over Hannah and Alice and I were just sitting there, happy that we had made it this far, determined that we were going to go back next year and hope for the best again. And they pull up my picture. And I think I really did black out because I don't remember getting up onto the stage. So all I have is Hannah very sweetly took a video for me after I'd gotten up on stage. And I'm just like, my face is like beet red. I am just clearly very shocked. I was in tears. I was so happy. And we ended up going through the rest of the girls, and it ended up being a top 17 because there were just 17 of us that they, decided were ready to be a part of that group. And since then, we have a group message. We've, some girls work full-time in the industry, so they've gotten to see each other at work and stuff like that. And now we are, again, anxiously awaiting the announcement of top 6. And those top 6 girls who get picked, which we should know in the next few days or week, or maybe 2 weeks, so keep your fingers crossed. Those top 6 girls will officially become rookies, and at the end of February, I believe, will go on their rookie shoot at an undisclosed location. So it's all very exciting. I think that's a great word for it, is that it's just a very exciting chapter in my life that could really elevate my career, hopefully in modeling to the next level. And I'm excited to be a part of a group and part of an organization that works so hard to break glass ceilings and barriers for these girls that might not necessarily feel like they have a place in this industry, but now they do. And it's very cool to see dreams come true for not only me, but for this group of girls as well.
So this has been a long wait for you. I mean, that started when? What date was that?
So I submitted my video at the end of May, beginning of June.
Oh, wow.
Didn't hear back from anything. Yeah. And then the open casting was in July, the middle of July. So yes, it has been a process. It's been quite a while, but it's never stopped being like, every time I talk about it, I start like nervous sweating and like getting butterflies in my stomach. And it's kind of cool to like be a part of the whole process and like kind of see how it all works.
So are you staying in shape as you're kind of waiting and in anticipation of possibly getting the call?
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of people know that getting ready for Miss USA, I lost almost 70 pounds. And it
70?
was just like it was a whole, yes.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It was a whole long journey and process for me to go from being this like kind of lost college student. I had the privilege and honor of going to college with my brother and now sister-in-law, still best friends since I was 10 years old. I think that I allowed myself to become, just part of the crowd, not realizing that I was destined for something much greater. And once I moved to Virginia, I started talking to some people that were a part of the Miss Virginia USA organization. I met my trainer, Craig Hughes, and he is just incredible. But not necessarily was I training to become Miss USA at that point. I was just focused on becoming healthy. I think I'd let myself get to the point where I was just at an unhealthy state. I was drinking a lot. I was hanging out with the wrong people. I was eating the wrong things. And I got winded walking up a flight of stairs. And as a 21-year-old at the time, that was embarrassing. So I was determined to get myself back in shape. And here we are now. And now I go to the gym every single morning, 6 days a week. I train at a UFC gym, and I think that was part of the process that propelled my love of fitness at this point, was finding something productive. I'm not the kind of person that will just go, hey, let's go run 10 miles for fun, because that's not fun. But once I got involved into UFC, I found something productive to do with my time, and I found a reason to become involved in, something athletic. Not only did I learn self-defense, I met some great friends through my UFC gym up here. And it really allowed me to get back in that mindset of becoming a healthy mid-20-year-old person that has so many great things in her future. So now I can do all of them without getting winded walking up a flight of stairs.
Well, when you started that process with Craig of losing 70 pounds and competing at Miss USA, I'm pretty sure that at that time you probably didn't envision yourself walking down a runway half naked for Sports Illustrated in a video that's been reposted a million times practically. I mean, it's like every time I log on to Instagram, there it is.
Yes, I did. I 100% did not see that. And again, going back to Jazz Wilkins, she was always such a huge inspiration for me. And, I like I said, I figured after Miss USA, if there was going to be a time to do this, it was going to be now. So I just went for it. And thankfully, praise God, it's worked out so far. So We'll see what happens. But even if I don't make Sports Illustrated this year, you can bet your butt I will be back there next year for the open casting because I've had such an incredible experience with this company.
Well, let me ask this. When you get into the 16 and you talk to everybody that interviewed you and obviously made the choice, do they tell you why? Mm-hmm. Do they tell you the things that they liked about you or the attributes that they thought, fit what they were looking for?
I think, yes and no. I mean, I didn't get to talk to every single person, but I got to talk to Brooks a little bit, and she said that I think just us on a personal level had a connection, which helped a lot because I know she had a say in, who got picked, as did all of the other girls. So they take that into consideration. They also take into consideration your photo shoot with Utah. It's just a few little snapshots, and I think that was part of it as well. And then the little interview I got to do with MJ, I think I really just showed her who I was and told her, she goes through the pictures that Utah took of you, and she, you and her pick out your favorite together. That gets then submitted for them to consider whatever. And you get to talk to her a little bit. So I got to express to her that, I picked this smiling picture of me that has been seen in People magazine now, which is just absolutely insane. But I picked this smiling picture of me because I'm not necessarily a very serious, sexy, whatever person. I consider myself sexy. I consider myself beautiful. But I'm not that all the time. I am a goofball. I'm just kind of a weirdo. And I think that picture really showed that. But then I also got to talk to her about how cool I thought it would be to be the first military woman to be represented in Sports Illustrated. That has never happened before. So when I say that this company breaks glass ceilings and barriers for these girls, that's what they do. Being the first military woman ever to be represented in Sports Illustrated Swimsuit would be just mind-blowing for me because it's such a cool group of women to be a part of as a military woman that I think representing that group of women would be such an honor and just such a cool experience, especially in this aspect, going from, the down and dirty uniform in the field working in the dirt type of girl that everybody thinks that I am to Sports Illustrated on a beach in a barely there bikini in the middle of whatever island that we get to go to. So, yeah.
Well, since you and I are recording this interview, by the way, in late January, for those of you listening, I recorded this a few weeks back. Will we know by the time this airs if you've made it or not? You
should. Hopefully we'll know late January, so we should know in the next week or two because the shoots will be at the end of February. So fingers very much crossed, or maybe congratulations by now. I don't know.
I'm going to call it out and say congratulations. Way to go.
Oh, thank you. Here's to hoping. From your lips to God's ears, that's for sure.
Well, I love it. Well, you were mentioning your military experience, and number one, for everybody listening and myself, thank you for your service. We really, really appreciate it. And it is so nice to see someone like you in the military serving and doing what you do. Now, you're fifth generation in your family, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Wow. So you basically grew up knowing, hey, I'm going to be in the military.
Not necessarily, actually. It's kind of a funny story. So, yes, I am fifth generation. My great-grandfather was a Marine. He fought in Guadalcanal. In the movie, actually, we were soldiers. I don't know if people have seen that. But in that movie, he was one of the soldiers in that group that survived. So I am very honored and privileged to be a part of a family with such a cool military legacy. My mom was a female badass in the military. So was my stepmom. My stepmom flew C-5 Galaxies for the Air Force. So she flew those big, giant cargo planes for the Air Force. My mom was an interrogator for the Army. My dad was Special Forces. My brother is currently active duty infantry and is the first commissioned officer from my mom's side of the family, which is a very cool thing to say. And when I was 17, I was still in high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. My family had these big plans for me to go to college and, get this beautiful, cushy job behind a desk. And not that they didn't think I was capable of more, but I think on a safety-wise for parents, I think that's what they were hoping I would choose. And lo and behold, I decided to follow in their footsteps and joined the Army when I was 17 and left for basic training about a little less than a month after I graduated high school, So it's been an experience. My parents, needless to say, are very, very proud of my brother and I. And I'm going into February will actually be 6 years in the military, and I just signed another 6-year contract. So I just committed to another 6 years in the Army, and I'm very excited to see, where my career takes me with that.
So when we say military woman, I realize that's a very wide array of things that we could say. You are in the Army. I've seen pictures of you with, a tactical vehicle and a rifle in your hand. So what exactly is it that you do in the military for people listening?
So I am what's called a psychological operations specialist. It is basically someone, we go into whatever area of operation that we have at the moment, and our job is to build rapport or a relationship with the people of this area, just to kind of get a feel for, the kind of people we're working with, we work a lot with mass media communication, so figure out how they get their news, or, what type of social media they have access to, which is, crazy to think, the middle of Iraq, these people have access to social media, but clearly they do because we are in such a high-tech time. So that's kind of my job, and then we figure out how we can best use that to our advantage and work with this civilization or population of people to build a relationship and co-work with these people and see what we can do for them, what they can do for us, and how that relationship would work best for both of us.
Now, from my time in the news when I was a journalist and I worked back when it was the Iraq War, I know that there are certain units that are more likely to be deployed first. And then there are some that, it only gets to that point if it gets really serious. Are you in one of the units that, if something happened overseas, you get deployed quickly, or is it something where you might not go for a while?
Right. So I am in one of those units. There's a whole process that goes behind it, which you probably know. But if something does, happen to go down wherever in the world, we kind of get a notification, not to be on standby, but just hey, keep an ear out, keep an eye out, pay attention to your emails, stuff like that, and just be prepared for whatever. So a few weeks ago, when we had that small crisis with Iran, I was told, don't be alarmed, but, be prepared.
The Soleimani
that's basically, yes. Okay. So that's basically, any unit, they're going to tell you to be prepared at any point in time, and that's why we train so hard. I am in the reserve, so it's not something that I do day in and day out, but it's something that I train, it's not just the typical weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer that, you see on the cute little commercials that the Army puts out there. It's usually, a week every month at least, and then sometimes up to a month, 2 months, 3 months in the summertime training. So, it's stay prepared, but, be ready.
So do you consider yourself a tomboy, being a military girl?
And I think all the guys in my unit can attest to this, I do not consider myself a tomboy. I can shoot a gun just as good as the guy next to me. I prefer, the heavy machine weaponry, but I consider myself, a typical girl. I would definitely say that. I love everything, makeup, high heels, pretty clothing, pretty purses, stuff like that. But I can get down and dirty when I need to, for sure.
I feel a movie script coming along here with something just like that. That's perfect.
Wouldn't that be something?
Hey, it could happen. You never know. One other thing that I had mentioned in your intro that I think was really interesting, I'd love to hear more about it, is the Prudential Spirit of Community Award that you were presented by the Duchess of York at the White House. That's a pretty big deal. Let's hear about it.
That was a very cool experience, actually. So it happened a million years ago. It feels like I was in the 6th grade. Some people know that I started an organization when I was 10 years old with my best friend, and as I mentioned, now sister-in-law. My brother waited for 12 years for the love of his life, and now they're married with the most adorable baby I've ever seen in my life. So we started an organization together when we were 10 years old for wounded warriors. We raised money for prosthetic care for warriors that were coming home from war, whether it be, they needed home adaptation for their new life, or not all of them could afford the prosthetic care that they needed when they came home. So we started doing that at a very early age, and it got a lot of traction. Like I said, I grew up in a very small town, so people took notice of it, and I had a lot of support, a lot of people that cared very deeply for our veterans. I grew up in there was a few military bases around us at the time, and my parents, being veterans, were obviously friends with other veterans, so we got very lucky in the support that we got right off the bat. And then in 6th grade, I think it was one of my teachers or my mom or something submitted me for this award, and it was this whole process of being interviewed, and each school across the state could submit one student. So my school thankfully picked me to represent our school on the state level. And then I got picked, each state gets to send one middle school and one high school student that gets picked to this week-long thing it was in Washington, D.C. at the time. So I thankfully got picked to be the representative for the middle schoolers across the state of Georgia. And then basically we spent a week and a half in Washington, D.C., touring, meeting the other kids, meeting representatives and politicians and the Duchess of York, going to these seminars and kind of explaining to people and lobbying for our organizations that we created. And then at the end of that week, I think it was 5 or 10 people, it was so long ago, I can't even remember, 5 or 10 people got picked to present their organization to the board of the Prudential Insurance Company. Then at the end of that, one middle schooler and one high schooler from the nation got a grant for their organization. I didn't make it to the final round, but each middle schooler and high schooler got presented with an award at the White House from the Duchess of York at the time. And it was a very cool experience. Like I said, it was so long ago, but it's something that I carry with me for the rest of my life. I have a medal that I got for the work that I put in for Wounded Warriors from the White House. So it kind of just solidifies everything that I've worked for and worked hard for these Wounded Warriors. Now that my organization has adapted to the times and through my experiences in the military, I think it's grown and it's been such a incredible experience with my organization. I'm very proud of how far it's come, for sure.
Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations on doing that. And I appreciate how much effort you put into doing something like that, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that would do that.
Thank you. It's definitely been, like I said, it's adapted over time because of my own experience. I grew up in the military, but I never really had that, firsthand experience when it comes to working with soldiers with prosthetics or working with soldiers with PTSD or traumatic brain injury. So since I've enlisted, I think it's adapted and changed so much because of the experiences that I've had in the military. And it's very cool to see how my experience has impacted the organization itself.
Well, very cool. One last thing I want to chat about before we do our get to know you questions. It's totally goofy stuff, but it's Bachelor related. So I know you're watching. Yes. You're watching two of your sisters compete on The Bachelor right now. I watched it last year. Yeah. I crowned Hannah Brown and Kaylin Miller-Key, so I watched that whole thing unfold last year and how that went down. But now as a sister, or we'll call it classmate of the girls competing now, what is it like for you to watch those girls on there? And I guess the other question is, what is the draw to why these girls want to do it so bad? I think the draw is not necessarily for the clout or the fame that comes along with it, but it's kind of, I've seen it go two ways. After girls leave Miss USA, a lot of girls go back to, their normal life. A lot of them have very stable, steady, amazing careers that they were already working on, and they go back to that. Or a lot of girls get married or whatever. But I've seen it go two ways for these types of girls. One group of girls will go towards Sports Illustrated. Thankfully, that I was one of those girls, and I've been very lucky in that. Another group of girls tend to go towards, yes. And another group of girls, Group A addendum or whatever, go towards The Bachelor. And I don't think they go for any negative reasons. I mean, I don't know the brains of each and every one of these girls. But I know my two sisters who are on this season did not go on there to find fame or whatever, the typical connotation comes along with pageant girls on The Bachelor. It's been interesting, especially the past few weeks, seeing everything play out. Because you and Alea are pretty tight, right?
Alea, I am very proud to say, is one of my best friends in this world, and I'm very, very proud of how she has handled herself and everything that has come along with this season. The same with Victoria. I mean, I think there's so much you don't see on these shows. The same went for Kaylin and Hannah. There's so much you don't see on these shows that you don't get to know these girls. I have spent enough time with these girls to know very well who they are. Alea and we are travel buddies. We've been to Mexico together. We're about to go on another trip together. She is one of those people that I will have in my life for the rest of my life, and I don't think anything that I have seen on that show necessarily represents who she is, other than a goofy, loving, genuine, kind-hearted person.
And I will say the same about Victoria Paul. I was with Victoria when she literally came back when she was let go of the show or walked off the show, however you want to refer to it. And she is just a wonderful person, and I know she was concerned about how they were going to portray her and all this stuff, and I'm sure that's probably how it's played out. But yeah, it's just really interesting to watch And, I always just love to hear it from you girls and kind of your standpoint of what you think of it, because I know Alea's kind of been they've kind of labeled her as the, what do you want to call her? The bitch?
Yeah, the fake bitch, I think, is a good label. She clearly feels that that's how she has been labeled as well. So I'm not saying anything she doesn't already know. Thankfully, the girls in our class and the people that are close to her and the people that have followed along in her pageant career and her life know who she is, and they see right through the crap that this show sometimes puts these girls through. They very clearly pit pageant girls against each other. Like most shows, it's going to be for ratings and money. I think most of it is just completely fake and unnecessary. But I don't think this show necessarily cares about these girls as people. So it doesn't, my opinion is just one opinion.
Well, I can assure you they don't.
So,
and I had Alea on,
right.
and just a little behind the scenes for everybody listening, you don't know this. When I had Alea on, the Bachelor producers said, I want to be on the call. And so I had them on the call
right.
for all 60 minutes that we had the conversation. They just wanted to make sure that I didn't reveal anything about the show that Alea maybe had told me. And so that's how strict they get with their contracts and how much power they want to exert over you to make sure that they get what they want, but you don't get what you want. And I hate that about it. I really do.
Right. And she told me all about y'all's call and how they stayed on the phone the whole time. Thankfully for me, I am not under contract, so I owe them nothing. And I can very freely say that I think they are just not necessarily bad people, but I think they don't give two shits about these girls. And it's sad because then these girls come off this show and their lives are so different. Some of these girls really genuinely go on there to find love with this guy, and the way that they get portrayed and then end up getting sent home or whatever happens afterwards, that their lives don't go back to normal. They walk down the street and people who are diehard Bachelor fans really do recognize them in public. And it can be hard sometimes for these girls. And I think they get a lot out of the show in one aspect, but then again, like I said, they don't ever really get to live their normal lives again. One, because of their personal experience with the show, I think that changes them for sure, but then how other people see them as well.
Well, the funny thing is, literally every girl that's on, except for Kelsey Weir, I know Kelsey, but I've never really talked to her about The Bachelor. I pretty much talked to all of them before they ever went on the show because they'd ask me, what do you think? Do you think I should go on or not? And everybody from Hannah and Kaylin, I was always like, I'm not a huge fan. I don't think it's a really good thing. Yeah. Now, obviously, Hannah could look at me and be like, I proved you wrong. But, at the end of the day, you're taking a big, big risk, because you're putting yourself out there and literally that 2-year contract controls your life. You can't do anything else outside of ABC's permission. Even guys that were on The Bachelorette with Hannah, we tried to have Judge in some of our states. ABC said no, they didn't want him to come. And they literally can do that. I mean, that pageant had nothing to do with The Bachelorette, which was already over at the time, but that's how much control they exert. So, if you're thinking about it next year and you're like, well, I want to do what Hannah and Kaylin and Kelsey and Alea and Victoria did, I'm telling you, really think that through, because I don't know if it's a great idea myself, but, if fame is what you want, then go for it.
Exactly. And I absolutely feel the same way you do, actually. I just remember talking to Alea as she was thinking about going on the show, and we really sat down. Thankfully, I've gotten very close with her family. Her mom and I are also great friends, and we all considered the pros and cons that went into this, and there was a lot of back and forth on whether or not she could do it or she should do it. She ended up obviously going, and it wasn't necessarily what she thought it was going to be. But now she has that life experience. She can say she did it, and it happened. It is what it is, and now it's her turn to figure out what to take from this experience as a positive and then what to learn from as well.
And I also, say look at it as a marathon. Yes, it's exciting right now. And, Hannah Brown's still in the spotlight. I think Kaylin Miller-Keys is making good money online. But it has a short window, and you got to remember, you got the rest of your life. Is this something that you want on your record or not? And you got to think about that. So that's our 2 cents. I didn't want to dig too much into it, but I thought it was really interesting that you and Alea are tight, and you've been watching, and I just, it's the talk of the town right now, so I get it. All right, you ready for speed questions?
I am so ready.
All right, I put a couple of together just for you, so here we go.
Okay.
Number 1, you're a military girl, so what is your weapon of choice?
The 240 Bravo. It's a machine gun.
Oh, yeah. There we go. All right, number 2. Where would you want to retire?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably, I don't know, somewhere warm. I'm not a big fan of winter.
Well, you're on the coast, so you're okay.
Yes. Let's say, I don't know. Oh man, that's so hard. I love Europe though too. So I'm actually gonna go with Holland because that's where my whole family is.
Holland. Okay, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one. Number 3, which do you like more, gold or silver?
Gold.
Number 4, where were you born?
Stuttgart, Germany.
Ooh. Number 5, what is your favorite sport to watch?
Ooh, I'm not a sports gal, but I would say golf or baseball.
Interesting dynamic there.
I know.
Number 6, what is the last thing that you liked on social media?
Probably a picture of a Leo, honestly.
There's plenty of them out there. Number 7, would you consider yourself a leader or a follower?
Leader.
Number 8, prepare yourself. What makes you angry?
Okay. Ooh, dishonesty.
Number 9, do you have any pets?
I have 2 rescue dogs, 2 poodles. I had a little kitty. She just passed away. She was 20 years old, though, so she had a good life for sure.
Wow, okay. And number 10, are you a morning or a night person?
I would like to say neither. 100% not a morning person, though, so I'll go with night.
Just don't bother you before like 6 a.m.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's 10 questions. You're off the hook. Thanks for answering. Look, I've really enjoyed this. I know you and I have both been looking forward to this conversation for a while. We actually had a chance to catch up at Miss Universe, but I love your story. And I don't mean that from a Miss USA story standpoint. I really appreciate the fact that, you lost the 70 pounds. You've been through 10 years of pageantry. You're a military girl. You're out to help people. I mean, there's so much there that I'm very appreciative of. And I really appreciate you coming on here to share it with everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I like you said, we've been looking forward to this for a while, and I'm glad we got to put our experiences and our opinions out there, and hopefully people appreciate them. And if they don't, then I don't really care.
Thanks for listening to today's episode, everybody, and to Courtney Lynne Smits for her time. Now, if you want to follow Courtney on social media, you can check out her Instagram page. It's at Courtney_Lynne12. Let me spell that for you. COURTNEY_LYNNE12. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and do me a favor, subscribe to the podcast if you would. You can do so on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, the podcast app, Google Play, or you can just go to lifeafterthecrown.com. And for weekly podcast updates, just follow me on Instagram at Tim T. Aldo. Until next time, remember the words of Hebrews 4, verses 12 and 13. God means what he says. What he says goes. His powerful word is sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, cutting through everything, whether doubt or defense, laying us open to listen and obey. Nothing and no one is impervious to God's word. We can't get away from it, no matter what. Make it a great week, everybody.